Welcome to Minutes with Mango, Life in Motion. I'm your host, Johnny Mango. This is the place where we inquire about lifestyle, culture, and careers. Weekly, we meet with new guests that make a contribution of their insightful stories about their careers and how those careers impact their lifestyle and culture. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Minutes with Mango. I'm Johnny Mango, and for the past few podcast episodes, we've really been focusing on spirituality to try to offer all of you various perspectives on the interpretation of spirituality. And today we have a really informative guest. Her name is Ronnie Ann Ryan, and she offers a real fresh, engaging approach to spirituality and personal growth that's really practical. So she specializes in blending intuition, humor, and actionable suggestions to help people shift from struggle to ease and manifest positive change. Doesn't that sound great? So here we are, and welcome, Ronnie, and welcome to the Minutes with Mango.
I'm thrilled to be here. Mango is my favorite fruit. Not that you're a fruit, but, but I'm very happy to be here, Johnny.
Well,
Thank you.
Some people think I am a fruit, but we won't get into that. Well, Ronnie, let's get started tell us a little bit about your background and who you are and how you got to this place that you're in now.
Okay. Such a big question, right? So my spiritual journey started in my 20s, which was a number of years I don't disclose anymore. And I started by reading a book called The Search for Bridie Murphy, which was a really old book when I read it. And it was all about a woman who was hypnotized and they popped into her past life where she was Bridie Murphy. And I was like, what's this about? I was so excited. And so I started, that was actually in my teens. And then, I got really serious around 25, 26. And I started taking classes and reading and started doing Reiki and all kinds of stuff, which then I ended up channeling. I worked on my intuition, and then I did a whole year of past life training, which for me has been one of the most valuable, fascinating experiences. And I've done loads of past life readings for people. It's always jaw-dropping. I haven't met many famous people, but who came back. But anyway. That's not what it's usually about. So today, I work with clients who are seeking answers. Sometimes people are stuck or they're going through a difficult passage in their life, and there is help. There is more than just our direct knowledge in our brains and what can be found on the web or in books. There's help from spirit that's very real, and that's what I'm thrilled to help provide. So I often talk to your spirit guides or use my spirit guides. Sometimes there's angels involved. I don't always identify who it is because they don't always identify themselves to me. But I know it's always a very high frequency and vibe. And then I also do energy clearing, where sometimes we have a lot of stuck emotions and belief systems that they get stuck in your body. Go figure. And we got to get rid of them so that we can move on. So anyway, that pretty much sums it up.
Okay. So, I'm always curious on how people develop their approach to spirituality. It sounds like you kind of went through kind of a series of different experiences to get yourself to where you are today. And how would you describe, your current approach to spirituality? Is there a way to describe that?
Wow, that's a very interesting question. You're making me think. My first reaction to that is to say it's a way of life for me. It's in everything I do. I mean, sometimes I'm not conscious of everything, I might open a bag of chips or whatever, and that's not spiritual. But a lot of what I look at is spiritual. Not that, when 4 maple leaves roll across my path in the breeze, I think it has meaning. But I do think there are messages and there is meaning in a lot of things, especially when you're looking for solutions or answers or understanding. So to me, my spirituality is a part of my way of life. Like I have a sign in my office that says magic is a way of life. And to me, magic is how things come together, how we're all interrelated, how energy works. That's what I mean by magic. So to me, magic makes things fun. And so my approach to spirituality is understanding and fun, because there's no point if it's not fun.
So, you have kind of a humorous interesting approach. But let's talk about the magic thing for a second. I think what I heard you say was that when you use the term magic, it's really kind of a definition of what's going on a kind of an invisible plane. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think that's a great way of encapsulating it. Thank you.
Yeah. So Matt, when you use the term magic, you're not talking about somebody pulling a rabbit out of a hat. You're talking about something that's going on that we necessarily can't see right now.
I'm so glad that we got to talk about this because you just clarified that for me. For so long, I've been trying to figure out how to talk about that, but you are so on the money. It's about the unseen, invisible world. You can't necessarily touch it, or, I mean, sometimes you can feel it, but for the most part, and to many, many people, it's all that stuff you can't see and you can't prove. Yeah, so that's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, doing spells or pulling a rabbit out of a hat. I am
Yeah.
just talking about all the energy and the things that happen and the connections that some rare people can see the energy, but I've seen auras occasionally, but that's not my strong point.
So what can you describe? I've seen some of the stuff that you've written, and you talk about the conversation on the inner plane. What's that? What is that inner plane? How would you describe that, or what is that conversation on the inner plane?
So that is exactly about talking to the other world, whether you're talking to people, loved ones who have passed on. Like, I'm not a superior medium, but I have done some mediumship. Or amazingly, I am a believer that there's consciousness in everything. So I've talked to fire, I've talked to plants and trees, and the conversations are on the inner plane because no one's sitting around listening while the tree is giving a speech, you know what I mean? But it's all intuitive. And I have found it really helpful, and it can also be a lot of fun. But you can gain wisdom from almost any place when you go in looking for a high vibration and wisdom. And it's there for us if you learn how to do it or rely on somebody else who's practiced and has good intentions.
Well, how does one learn how to do that?
Well, I can tell you this. It took me a long time. I must have had a vow not to do this kind of work in this life because I had to work so hard to build my intuition. I took a lot of classes, I practiced, I read about it, I did all this stuff. And for me, my intuition had really started working. And then when I did Reiki 1, which is a energy healing modality or energy work that came out of Japan, that tuned my energy to the point where I could finally allow a voice to come through mine. So it doesn't take over my body or my mind or anything like that, but my guides can talk to you through me. And so that, what happens is your energy can get tuned in higher and higher and higher to get better and more accurate information. So some people don't have to go through what I did. A lot of people today, there were so many spiritual awakenings just because of the time of COVID, and everybody had to look at their lives instead of running around. We were stuck at home, all that stuff. So
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, we had so many spiritual awakenings happen during that time. So there's a lot of new people in the field, but just because they've been doing it less time doesn't necessarily mean they're not as good, because sometimes people just crack open and get it, right away. I mean, I think there's some advantage to years of wisdom, but, the energy. So how you look at it is this is a world of energy. There really is nothing else. Matter is nothing but energy. It's the electrons running around, the neutrons and the protons in the atom, right? That's what's going on. It's all based on energy. So everything has energy. Therefore, everything has a pattern. Therefore, patterns can be read. And there you get communication, understanding, messages, feelings, knowledge, wisdom, because an energy pattern can be read. That's really the most scientific explanation I could give you.
So you're really identifying intuition, I think. And
yes.
And so is intuition more of a natural thing for everybody? Does everyone have it?
Absolutely. Everyone has it. It's coded into your DNA. And you know this if you've ever been observant at all. Like if you ever walked into a room and you could just feel like, oh, there must have been a big fight in here. That's your intuition. You're picking up signals, which you can pick up through your skin, through your brain, through your sense of smell, through your eyes, through your hearing. There's a lot of different ways you pick up that information. But it has, it has validity. So you can tell. So intuition was essential back in caveman days because you had to be present and you had to know, was that saber-toothed cat going to come around the corner, or some other warring tribe, or were you in danger, or other ways of looking at it, when everything was earth-based, where to plant and looking at the stars and understanding the moon cycle, because when's the best time to pick, or when's the best time to plant? And, it goes way back in our history. It's definitely in there. It was initially for safety. It's your gut reaction. People can deal with it sometimes better when you talk about it in less esoteric terms and you just say, it's my gut instinct.
So the gut instinct.
Yeah, your gut has 100 to 500 million neurons. And people always say, trust your heart. Your heart has like 40,000. So there's a lot to be said for heart coherence and how that relates to your body. And there's all the scientific stuff from the Heart Math Institute, which is very cool. But I want to trust my gut because 100 to 500 million is a lot of reasons to go with your gut.
Now, you have an MBA, right?
Yeah.
So a master's in business administration. So can you give me an example of how you've used intuition in business?
For sure. Okay. I'll give you two if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I'll go all the way back to when I worked in marketing at General Foods, which is now Kraft Foods. And I was sitting in a big room. I was younger, and it wasn't long after I had graduated, and we were doing a creative brainstorming session. So there were probably 20 people in the room. And believe it or not, I was working on Sanka, talk about old brands.
Yeah.
So they were trying to think of a new advertising campaign, and they had done a lot of stupid things, in my opinion, like underwater welder. Like nobody can relate to underwater welder as a reason to drink Sanka. So they went all around the room, and so my intuition, I could feel with empathy, why do people need to drink Sanka? And I thought, violin teacher, that screeching noise of somebody who doesn't know how to play. You need to calm your nerves and not drink caffeine. So, and then I said school bus driver. Those were the only two out of all those executives and creative people, and little Ronnie's ideas were the ones they used because I had tapped into the empathy with my intuition. But I'll give you a present day example. So I also have a certification in coaching, and I've been a coach for over 20 years. So there was this coaching company that was starting something new, and I had a friend who told me about it, and they were paying a lot of money. And I thought, I got to check this out. So I passed the interview process, and then I got hired, and then we had some training. And then the guy who owned the place, he sent out a note that says, we can get started as soon as we have 100,000 followers. But he didn't say how many he already had. And I just felt incredibly suspicious. He wasn't being transparent. I really didn't warm up to the guy through any of the process. He was kind of tricky. He wouldn't tell you what he wanted. And I just don't play games very well. So I couldn't take it anymore. I felt like he didn't have the money. I added up how many coaches he hired and how much he promised to pay us. And it was $3.5 million. And I thought, this guy's lying. He doesn't have any cash. So I went to the website. See, this is my two sides of my brain. I'm a little unusual because I'll do all the math and then I'll go use my intuition. So I went on his website and I looked at his picture. So this is conversation on the inner plane. And I looked at him and I said, I don't trust you. I feel uncomfortable. You're not being transparent. Please help me understand what's happening here. And in my brain, I never could have made this up. This is not my language. I heard him say, not my problem. Like, I could have made up a lot of things like, don't worry, or you're being silly, or of course I have the money, or I don't have the, but no, that's what he said. Not my problem. And I was like, not my problem. So I said, wait a minute, because you can always check back in, and ask another way, and I said, not my problem. You don't care about trust and being transparent? And he said, nope, not my problem. I was like, wow. So I believe in myself. I trust my gut. And I wrote him a little note and I said, I'm backing out. Sorry. Before we even started, I hadn't done one class. I'm like, if I can want to work for free, I can work for myself. You know what I'm saying? So, okay, let's fast forward 18 months. I went and looked up the company, and the first thing that came up was Indeed.com, where there were reviews. And one person reviewed the company by saying, nice idea, no money. And the other one said, heart's in the right place, never got paid. So,
Interesting.
yeah, but I also wouldn't let myself look to see what was happening there for quite some time. I thought, just leave it alone. That's one
Yeah.
of the hardest things.
So,
Leave it alone.
so it sounds like intuition is very important to you. Is that
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine my life without my intuition.
so? Why is it so important to you?
Well, I can't tell you how many times it saved my butt. And
Okay.
it took me a long time to learn to listen. Like, right, this was an early story. I was sitting, my living room, dining room in my apartment years ago was L-shaped. So I'm in the living room, and then you go around the elbow to the dining room. So I couldn't see the dining room. So I had candles lit on the table, and then I was in the other section of the room. I know that doesn't make sense, but it's what I did. So I'm reading a book, and I'm just sitting there. And in my head, I hear this voice go, tables burning. And I was like, what? Where did this crazy voice come from? What is that? That's nonsense. Forget that. Couldn't I have gotten up and looked? So eventually I had to use the restroom, and I got up and I turned the corner, and sure enough, the candle had rolled out of the holder and was burning a nice mark in my antique oak table. So I could have not had any problem and not had any damage to my table. So there are a lot of places in my life where I have asked questions and been, helped, or I've been alerted to something as well.
And you say everybody has this. They just don't recognize it or pay attention to it or discount it or.
Yeah, they don't believe in it, which is fine. I mean, everybody gets to do it their way, So you don't believe in it, that's a choice. Everybody gets to make the choice. Or they don't believe in themselves. Like me, I heard something, I didn't trust it or believe it. It was early on. But we can also be stubborn and just think, "Oh, that's just my fear talking."
Yeah.
It takes practice. And my biggest piece of advice, if you really wanted to learn to trust your intuition, develop and trust it, is to keep a journal. And this isn't about writing pages. It's just about bullet points.
Yeah.
Because there's no other evidence. So I wrote down, heard tables burning, did nothing about it. Right. And so
Yeah.
I have a history, and I can look back and read it and see all the messages, see what transpired as a result. It's invaluable. It's my own personal book of magic, not how to do magic, but examples of the intuition and magic in my life and how I have been guided and helped and supported. And that helps me pay attention because I start to see how well it's worked.
So can you explain what you've identified as the new path for learning and growth that's emerging today?
Yes, this gets me very excited. Because when people talk about personal growth and spiritual development, that kind of thing, a lot of times it comes from pain, the dark night of the soul, and all these terrible things that are put upon us and that we have to survive. And they're real, they're true, but a lot of times that's the path when people will say, well, I had to stop drinking, or I was in a bad car accident, or my husband left me, or I had an illness, or whatever. And those are reasons that often create a spiritual awakening and growth.
So those are moments of trauma.
Yes, moments of trauma. Very good. However, as I was talking about earlier, the energy has sped up and the vibration in the world has elevated dramatically. And so even though there's all kinds of bad things happening that we don't want to talk about really today, there's so much good. There's so much magic. There's so much possibility. And what I've come to see is that you don't have to learn only through crisis and trauma and pain and struggle. You can learn by lifting yourself up to get a better view of what's for you, what's next, what's your best step, how to understand what's happening so you can survive it and move through it at the quickest pace or at the straightest path. I mean, life is more like sailing where you have to tack. You go left, you go right, you go left, you go right. It's not really a straight line, but wouldn't it be nice if those left and rights were shorter so it was closer to the straight line? So today, I have a group that I work with. And I taught them about manifesting, and we all worked to manifest together. They've developed their intuition just by us being together as a group. It was not an intuition class, but they're all using it. They see things, they hear things. One woman always hears song lyrics as the message. And I'm watching them and experiencing how they change, because let's say one woman wanted a promotion and it took her 7 months, but she finally got the promotion, and they were just dragging their feet at work for some reason. And somebody else needed to buy 2 new cars at the same time. And so she wanted to find the best cars at the most affordable price and this and that. And she got guided. So there's all kinds of things. Somebody else was having problems with her boyfriend. And so, we looked into what was going on and what was the core issue and how could she best address this. And she did not address it directly with him. She addressed it on the inner plane, and it still worked. So you don't have to go through more pain to grow. Even if you're in pain, you can elevate your energy. And that's, it's hard right now because there's a lot of stuff that's getting people very upset all over the world. It's not just in our country. There's all kinds of things going on. And so you get to choose what you focus on. That's another kind of magic where you choose to say you're putting your head in the sand. What do you want to focus on today? Do you want to be upset about the news, or do you want to go take a walk in nature and let the trees, give you good vibes and help lift your energy?
So what I'm hearing you talk about is kind of that new path is really about growing through love versus trauma, for any better word.
That's interesting. So love is a high vibration. And there's a Hertz scale by David Hawkins. And I'm talking about a lot of science today. It's kind of funny. But anyway, love is 500, I think, or 520. But gratitude is 600. So love actually isn't the highest vibration. It's enlightenment. But right below enlightenment is gratitude. So on my own podcast, I just did an entire episode on how to embody gratitude, which is next level gratitude, not just make a list, but really feel each piece of gratitude, and go to the little things instead of the big things, because there's so many more little things, like the sunshine on your face, or a rabbit hopping across your path, or seeing a monarch butterfly, or somebody smiled at you, or having an ice cream cone. These things can fill your body with this high level vibration that shifts how you see the world and experience it. So this isn't la-la stuff. This is science.
So
that's the amazing thing.
What I'm hearing you say is just be nice to everybody.
Well, that's a nice thing to think about. And, you might not accomplish that. And, you might struggle with that. It's just like people talk about you have to love yourself. That's not an easy task for everyone. It's a platitude. But start small and build up,
Yeah.
That's how I really look at it. If you try to embrace everything and love everything, chances are you're going to get a flat tire, and then you're going to be all crushed. And that's too many highs, too many lows. I mean, it's not to say you're going to get a flat tire just because you're happy, but something will happen, And so the idea is, when you remember the little things in life always will make you happy in any moment. The big things in life, getting married or graduating from college, buying a new house, getting a new car, always winning the lottery, and whatever it is, those things are spaced often, very widely. But the little things are there for you every day.
So it's a matter of, how about we encapsulate it like this? It's a matter of choosing gratitude rather than trauma, or gratitude over trauma, or when trauma arrives, we find gratitude.
It is a matter of choice, and that's hard to see sometimes, but it is a matter of choice, and you can learn to choose differently. It is a learned behavior. Sometimes it comes much more easily to people, and sometimes it feels like a struggle, but every time you move the dial even a little bit, you're moving and elevating your vibration and energy. So it serves you to even try. It's a practice. That's really what it boils down to.
Sometimes I think there's very little space between trauma and drama.
Well, that's a good observation.
It just You made me think about that. So let's talk a little bit about your work with past lives.
Okay.
So tell me about working with past life clients, because I know you do that. And how do you do that?
All right. So I took this past life class and we signed up quarterly. And so all of us in the group ended up staying for a year. Well, what happens when you work with a group is the group energy lifts you dramatically and you can access more information at a much higher level because of the group energy. Now, I didn't know this at the time. So we would get together and somebody would say, I'm having trouble with my boss and I don't know what to do. And he's so nasty or this or that, or she's, really mean or whatever. And so all of us would focus on that one person to see if there was a past life that would give us information or some understanding or some steps a person could take to improve the situation. So could we learn from the past? So first you have to have a belief in reincarnation. That helps. So we would do that, but we would all focus on the same person. And as a result, we'd all get answers from the one person and how many times they dovetailed or were the same or incredibly similar. Even if they came with different symbols or words, it was amazing. So we got into that rhythm of understanding the energy that working together, we would get confirmation all the time because we'd get such similar information that we would share after we all kind of tuned in. It was astonishing. And then what I realized was looking back is the same as looking forward. It's the same skill or being in the present and trying to understand something in the present. So I really don't do any predictive work, but I do work with people to help them know their next best steps energetically. So anyway, working at past lives, I have a couple of amazing stories. I used to work at psychic fairs, don't tell anyone, years and years ago, and I did past lives. So the most amazing one was a young woman sat down. Obviously, she was aged. They had to give us a little piece of paper with their name. We collected them, and that's how we got paid at the end of the night. So I could see she had a Japanese last name. But anyway, she wanted to know about her most recent incarnation. Like, who was she previously to being this American Japanese girl? So I tuned in and saw something that I found kind of disturbing and shocking, which was she was an American sailor in Hawaii at Pearl Harbor. So I thought, oh my gosh, first of all, that really shows you the amazingness of the soul. That guy would come back as a Japanese woman, just kind of, blew my socks off. And then she said, well, why am I so terrified of like fireworks and big noises? And I'm like, well, you did, die in the bombing. And then she said, I'm terrified of water. I'm afraid I'm going to drown. I'm like, yeah, because unfortunately you drowned in your last life. And so it was a whole series of those things. I was like, that was just so fascinating to me.
So this all comes to you through an intuitive process, I would take.
Yes, of course. Now, today, I recognize it as what some people call the Akashic Records, which is somehow, there's a big energetic storage place, library, sometimes it's called.
Like a giant hard drive.
Yeah, and that has the records of everybody's lives. And that didn't become popular until, I don't know, somewhere between 20 and 25 years ago. Although Edgar Cayce, who was called the Sleeping Prophet, he certainly talked about the Akashic Records. But I didn't realize that's what we were doing for that whole year. We didn't talk about it like that. But anyway, so if you believe in reincarnation, then we're here. You might believe that we're here to learn lessons, Earth School. That's how I look at it, that we're here to learn. And so she came to understand what were those Japanese people like and why did this happen? That's certainly one of her lessons. I'm sure she had many more.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Well, we're going to be running out of time here in a minute, but Ronnie, I want to really thank you for taking the time today to share with us so much on spirituality, and that you have this kind of what I would call a grounded approach to spirituality, which is, I think, rather unique. How does someone find you? What's the best way for somebody to get in contact with you?
Okay. And by the way, thank you, John, for being here. I really enjoyed chatting with you. And yes, thank you for recognizing my practicality, because I do have a very grounded way of working with a very esoteric skill. So So the best way to reach me is my website, intuitiveedge.biz, which is B as in boy, I-Z. Or you can listen to me on breatheloveandmagic.com, or Breathe Love and Magic is my podcast name, and you can find that on any platform.
Breathe, Love, and Magic. Is that correct?
Yes, you got it.
Okay, very good. Well, Ronnie, thanks again for coming by, and I really appreciate it. And you have just a wonderful day today.
You too, Johnny. Thank you so much.
You have been listening to Minutes with Mango, Life in Motion. Subscribe to hear a new and unique guest each week as they comment on their life's journey and share experiences with lifestyle, culture, and career. You can always find us at minuteswithmango.com.